Hello, and welcome to Cheating Husband Story.
I gave everything to my son, Ethan, for 30 years. I poured my life into raising him, working tirelessly, nursing him through illness, paying for his education. I even gave up my marriage, gave up my own life, just so he could have a better one. But the day I told him I had lost my job, his first response was to throw me out, calling me a useless burden, a parasite. That was the moment I stopped swallowing my pride. I refused to be the mother who got stepped on any longer. I was going to stand up for myself. Though I had nothing, what he didn't know was that my late employer, who really respected me for the past years I devoted, had left me a fortune. And this time, I'll make sure he realizes that the price of betraying me is far greater than he could ever imagine. I had just gotten home when I told my son Ethan that I wouldn't be working for Catherine anymore. I hadn't even gotten to explain why before his face darkened and he cut me off mid-sentence. His voice rose sharply, his face flushing with anger. "Why would you suddenly quit? That was $8,000 a month. What are you planning to do now? Just sit around freeloading?" The bit of joy I'd felt coming home instantly vanished. Did he really think I left that job just to take it easy? I came back because I wanted to make life easier for them. His words hit me like a slap in the face, but I didn't lash out. I knew he'd been under a lot of pressure these past few years. His wife, Nicole, came from a family that never thought much of ours. Her mother's a university professor, and her father works in local government. They've always looked down on Ethan's background. To them, their daughter married beneath her. Nicole, following their lead, constantly took jabs at him, calling out his salary, his upbringing, anything she could to chip away at his confidence. Still, I figured once they found out about the inheritance Catherine left me, $8 million, they'd finally see Ethan in a new light, maybe even treat him with some respect for once. But I didn't bring up the money, not yet. Instead, I mentioned the other reason I'd come home. "Didn't you say Nicole's planning to get pregnant soon? I thought I'd come back early to help out, support her during the pregnancy, help with recovery afterward. Maybe even lend a hand with the baby." Nicole's expression turned cold in an instant. I could have sworn she even scoffed. "Postpartum recovery requires professional care," she said flatly. "You used to work as a housekeeper. What would you know about that?" Her mother, Susan, shot me a dismissive look and chimed in without missing a beat. "Taking care of a newborn isn't just diapers and bottles, it's a science. You need actual training. This isn't something amateurs can handle." The two of them tag-teamed their condescension so seamlessly, it was clear they'd already rehearsed this routine. And just like that, I'd been written off as an unfit caregiver. I gave a silent, bitter laugh. Nothing had changed. They still saw me as beneath them. Still, to keep the peace, I forced a smile and said, "Well, if everything's already arranged, I won't get in the way. I'll leave the baby care to you." Susan rolled her eyes like that was the only sensible thing I'd said all evening. "Fine," she replied, "but you'll cover the cost of the nanny and the baby nurse. I'll handle the hiring and coordination." That one line left me speechless, a tight knot forming in my chest. My son Ethan jumped right in, picking up where Susan left off without missing a beat. "Exactly, Mom. You never should have quit that job. Our expenses are about to double soon. You really ought to keep working." That's when it hit me, clear as day. They never wanted me to come home to rest. They just needed a steady paycheck funneled into the household. I was nothing more than a laborer to them, a walking ATM. My face hardened. "I'm 58. I think it's time for me to get some rest and retire." "Retired?" Nicole let out a bitter laugh. "You don't even have a pension. What retirement are you talking about?" Her words nearly knocked the air out of me. "I wanted to pay into a retirement plan years ago. It was you all who told me to save the money and help pay off your mortgage early instead. Now you throw that in my face?" Nicole tossed her hair and snapped, "That's because your income was pathetic. Who told you to buy a house you couldn't afford without a loan? You should have planned better." Ethan, now trying to calm Nicole down, raised his voice at me. "Enough, Mom. Nicole's trying to get pregnant. You're just stressing her out. This is when we really need the money, and you should be helping. You're still in great shape." There's no reason you can't keep working another 20 years. Save the retirement talk for when you're 80. Another 20 years? I froze, hollowed out by a wave of sadness I couldn't put into words. After everything I'd given, every sacrifice, every hour worked, every dollar earned, I was still nothing more than a cash machine in their eyes. That's when I truly saw it for what it was. All the talk of respect and gratitude, just sugar-coated lies to keep me working. Back when Ethan was still in college, he'd already started dating Nicole. To help them live more comfortably and to appease Nicole's judgmental family, I left everything behind and moved to another city to work as a live-in housekeeper, just so I could save enough to buy them a house. They didn't pay a single cent, yet the deed bore only their names. And back then, with tears in their eyes, they told me, "One day, when we're better off, we'll take care of you. You'll finally get the life you deserve." But now I know what they meant by the life I deserve. A life of endless labor, right up until my body gives out at 80. I held back my tears, steadied my voice, and said firmly, "I said I'm retiring. That's final. No one gets to make that decision for me." Susan must have realized I was serious and worried I might actually stop supporting them. Her tone softened instantly. "Look, it's not that we don't understand. You just have to be realistic. There's no spare room in the house for you. You can't expect to stay here forever, right? But I do have a compromise." I narrowed my eyes. Something about her expression made my stomach twist. "I happen to know a wealthy family looking for a live-in assistant. Good pay, room and board included. You've done that kind of work before. Should be an easy transition." Nicole jumped in with a smirk. "Perfect idea, actually. You could even help ease our financial load. Whatever you earn could go toward household expenses. Win-win, right?" Susan shrugged and added, "You're not someone who really needs to rest anyway. Going back to work wouldn't kill you. Don't be so quick to say no. Just give it a try. If you do well, you might even get to stay long-term." My face turned colder by the second. I already quit. I'm not going back into anyone's house to work ever again. Susan's smile vanished. Her gaze shifted, sharp now, calculating. "Well, if you're really done working for others, fine," she paused. Her voice suddenly aired but laced with pressure. "There's a senior residence nearby. Good facilities, decent meals and lodging. You could apply for a work-based stay. Maybe kitchen help, janitorial services, something to earn your keep." Nicole rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Now that's more reasonable. You can't just live in a hotel and expect us to foot the bill. At least in assisted living, you'd be pulling your own weight. Stop expecting us to carry you." Rage simmered in my chest, but I forced myself to stay composed. I turned to Ethan. "You really think it's acceptable to send your own mother off to scrub floors in a retirement facility just to keep herself fed?" His eyes darted away, but he tried to keep up his rational act. "Mum, be realistic. You've always said you wanted to be independent. Isn't this the most dignified way to do that? You support yourself, and we don't owe each other anything. And besides," he added, pulling out his phone, "there's an open spot available right now. I already called earlier to check. You could move in as soon as today." Then right in front of me, he started dialing the number again. I could hardly believe what I was witnessing. The child I had poured my entire life into raising was now so eager to shove me out the door like I was nothing more than dead weight. My hands trembled, and tears streamed down my face, unstoppable. "Ethan, I gave everything I had to raise you. I drained my savings to buy you a home, and now, at this moment, all you see me as is a burden you can't wait to get rid of. Is this how you repay your mother?" For a brief second, guilt flickered in his eyes, but it was quickly swallowed by rage. He kicked over my suitcase, sending it crashing to the floor. "You think you suffered? That was your choice. If you hadn't divorced my dad, we wouldn't have ended up broke. I could have grown up rich, and you ruined that. Let me tell you something, Margaret. You owe me for the rest of your life." I stood there in stunned silence, staring into his bloodshot eyes as a dull, unrelenting pain tore through my chest like a blunt knife, twisting slowly, slicing into everything I had left. "You had no idea. The only reason I divorced his father was for him. If I hadn't walked away from that marriage, his so-called wealthy father never would have claimed him as his son. In fact, he might have been dumped into foster care, treated like a stray dog no one wanted. Every sacrifice I made, every choice, every tear was for him to have a chance at a whole life. But now, here he was, biting back like a cornered animal, blaming me for destroying the very future I tried so hard to protect. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady the storm inside me, but the ache only deepened. All those years of devotion, of sacrifice, of love, suddenly felt like the cruelest joke life could have played on me. Ethan wasn't my biological child. He was adopted. The first time I saw him, I was volunteering at the city's child welfare center. He was barely a year old then, frail as a kitten, lips tinged with blue, his tiny body drained of all life. The director told me Ethan had been born with a severe congenital heart defect. His birth parents had abandoned him in a dumpster. A passerby heard his faint cries and brought him to the orphanage. I still don't know exactly what drew me to him. Maybe it was the way his eyes, full of fear and longing, clung to mine. Or maybe it was because I'd lost my own mother when I was very young. Something about watching a child suffer felt unbearable to me. I went home and discussed it with my then husband. After much thought, we decided to adopt him. From that moment on, we crossed the country searching for hospitals and specialists, doing everything we could to save Ethan's life. But 2 years later, my husband changed. He said he was tired of raising someone else's child. He wanted a child of his own. He gave me an ultimatum: either send Ethan back to the orphanage or leave him and raise the child alone. I didn't hesitate. I chose Ethan. Back then, his condition was still unstable. I was terrified that going back to the orphanage would mean delayed treatment or, worse, the end of his life. So I worked double shifts, sometimes 3 jobs at once. At night, I'd sit at the kitchen table, eyes burning, making handmade crafts just to scrape together extra income. And somehow, through those long, desperate years, I kept him afloat. He survived, recovered, and eventually became as healthy as any other boy. Even made it to college. I never told him the truth about his past, not because I wanted to lie, but because I didn't want to burden him. He was already a sensitive, insecure child. I didn't want him to carry the weight of knowing he was first thrown away by his birth parents, then rejected by his adoptive father. I wanted him to believe the world could still be kind, that love, real love, did exist. But never in my worst nightmares did I imagine he'd grow into this cold, selfish, ungrateful adult. As furious as I am now, there's also a flicker of relief. Thank God I never mentioned the trust fund. If they knew that the $8 million had already been legally transferred to me, I can only imagine how much uglier this would have become. I looked at Ethan, my gaze icy and unflinching. If this is how heartless you are, then so be it. From this moment on, we're done. You and I have nothing to do with each other anymore. I reached down, lifted my suitcase, and turned to leave, but Susan suddenly grabbed my arm. "What are you saying? Ethan is your son. You're supposed to be responsible for his future. You can't just pack up and walk away like this." Nicole stepped in, echoing her mother's outrage. "Yeah, what kind of mother does that? You raised him, and now you want to wash your hands of it. That's unbelievably irresponsible." I let out a cold laugh. "You're a college professor, an educated woman, and this is the argument you're making? Legally, a parent is only obligated to care for a child until they turn 18. Me? I've supported Ethan all the way into his 30s. What more does he expect?" Ethan's face twisted, his voice rising in fury. "That's not parenting. That's you making bad choices and trying to pay off your guilt. Every miserable thing in my life is because of you. You owe me for life." And then he shouted, voice dripping with venom, "Did you ask for my permission when you decided to bring me into this world?" I almost laughed out loud at the sheer madness of it. He sounded completely deranged. I stared at him like he was a stranger, someone I no longer recognized. "I must have been blind to have raised someone like you. And if you've got such deep, twisted philosophical questions, Maybe you should ask your birth mother, the one who left you in a dumpster. I didn't know if he even processed what I just said. He froze for a beat, confused, but the fury still clung to his face. It didn't matter whether he understood or not. He no longer concerned me. I shook off Susan's grip and walked out the door without looking back. Almost immediately, I heard angry shouts behind me. "You're disowning your own son. You're not even human. Don't get too proud, Margaret. When you're old, sick, and no one wants to take care of you, let's see how far that independence gets you. No one's going to hire a woman your age. When you hit rock bottom, don't come crawling back to us." I paused, turned around slowly, and looked at them with cool detachment. "You should be more worried about yourselves," I said calmly. "Don't forget the house you're living in. That house you treat like your birthright was bought with every penny I scraped together over the years. If I ever decide to take it back, don't be so sure you'll still have a place to live." Nicole stormed to the doorway, pointing a finger at my face, seething with rage. "Don't you dare touch this house. It's registered in my and Ethan's names. It's legally ours. You have no claim." The more she shouted, the steadier I felt. "Fine," I said, my voice unwavering. "Then hear this. I don't care if I have to spend the price of 2 houses. I will not let this house stay in the hands of a bunch of ungrateful leeches." Nicole's eyes widened in disbelief. Then she burst out laughing, her voice mocking. "You've lost your mind. 2 houses. You probably don't even have $1,000 to your name. This house is ours. It's our marital property. You're just some washed-up maid trying to bite off more than you can chew. Get lost. People like you deserve to rot on the street." With that, she slammed the door in my face. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I just turned toward the elevator, pulled out my phone, and started browsing listings for luxury homes in the city's top neighborhoods. A bitter smirk played at my lips. If I didn't move into the best house in town, I'd be doing a disservice to the $8 million sitting comfortably in my trust fund. That night, I checked into the most exclusive 5-star hotel downtown. Then I contacted Catherine's private attorney and instructed him to initiate the legal proceedings to reclaim everything that was rightfully mine. In the days that followed, I lived in that hotel while diving deep into the city's luxury real estate market, researching properties, reviewing listings, and scheduling viewings. A week later, I had an appointment to tour a highly sought-after gated villa community. It was the most prestigious development in town. What I didn't expect was the sales agent assigned to show me the property was none other than Susan's niece, Chloe. The luxury real estate showroom was bustling with people. Despite the starting price of these villas being well over $1 million, the project's exclusivity had drawn a steady stream of prospective buyers. I had just stepped into the grand lobby when a young woman with long hair and a fresh, eager smile approached me. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Would you like me to walk you through the project details?" "Yes, please. Could you start by showing me the model homes?" I followed her toward the display area, but we hadn't made it more than a few steps when a sharp voice rang out across the room. "Who's handling client screening today? Do we just let anyone walk in now?" I looked up. There she was, Chloe, Susan's niece, Nicole's cousin. We'd only met a few times, but she had left a lasting impression. Classic social climber attitude, the kind who drips arrogance in every word and move, constantly flaunting how she only dealt with high society clients. Before I could react, she was already striding over, heels clicking confidently, eyes full of disdain. "Margaret, what are you doing here?" I glanced at her coolly and kept walking. "I'm here to view a property. Is there a problem?" She immediately stepped in front of me, blocking my path with a sneer. "A housekeeper? You think you can afford this place? Don't tell me you're just here for the free coffee. I've seen plenty like you, pretending to be buyers just looking to snag some free snacks." People nearby began glancing over, whispering, their expressions carrying that uncomfortable mix of judgment and curiosity. Some even nodding slightly, as if to say, "She's not wrong." The young assistant beside me spoke gently, trying to diffuse the situation. "Chloe, I'm not busy right now. I can show this lady around." But Chloe shoved her aside without hesitation. eyes burning with contempt. "And who do you think you are, lecturing me on how to do my job?" The girl shrank back, intimidated. Then Chloe turned and waved over 2 security guards. "You two, escort this visitor out of here now." The showroom fell silent. All eyes were on us. I raised my hand calmly, stopping the guards before they could approach. "I came here to view a property. On what grounds are you kicking me out? Where's your manager? I'd like to speak with someone in charge." I turned toward the crowd. "You're all here to look at properties too. Why don't you tell me? Have I done anything inappropriate?" The guards hesitated. I wasn't backing down, and they clearly didn't want to get involved in something messy. Chloe stood with her arms crossed, scoffing loudly. "Go ahead, make a scene. Let's see how far you take this performance." Just then, a young man in a crisp white shirt approached quickly, wearing a polished, professional smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Alex, the sales manager for this project. Is there an issue I can assist with?" Before I could speak, Chloe jumped in. "Alex, she's just here for the freebies. I was about to have security remove her." Alex frowned slightly, but kept his tone courteous. "Ma'am, would you mind showing us some form of financial verification? As you know, this is an invitation-only showcase, and we do require proof of purchasing ability." Without hesitation, I pulled out a folder. They already verified my documents at the entrance. Chloe snatched the folder out of my hand and flipped it open dramatically. "5 million? Are you kidding me?" she shouted, loud enough for half the showroom to hear. "She's a housekeeper. There's no way she has that kind of money. I know her background better than anyone here." She added smugly, "This has to be fake. We can't let someone like her play us." Alex stood there frowning deeply, clearly caught in the middle. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and held it up for them to see. The young assistant leaned in, counting softly under her breath. 1,000. Oh my God, over 8 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People's eyes widened, no longer judging, now stunned, curious, even slightly in awe. Someone near me whispered, "Damn, she's got serious money." Chloe's face drained of color, cycling rapidly from red to pale green to ghost white. She looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor, but Chloe still wouldn't give up. She kept pushing, her voice sharp and stubborn. "Stop it, Alex. That banking app on her phone has to be fake. There's no way she has that kind of money." Alex's face darkened, his brow furrowing deeply. "Chloe, that's enough." Then he turned to me with a composed, respectful tone. "Ma'am, I truly apologize. This has clearly been a mistake on our part, and we'll handle it appropriately. I'll assign our most experienced client manager to assist you right away." I waved a hand lightly, offering a calm smile, then turned to the young woman who'd greeted me earlier. "No need. She's perfectly fine, very professional. I want her to show me the property." Alex looked slightly uneasy. "Actually, she just started. Still in training, technically. I was only worried she might not have enough experience. But I like her," I said firmly, leaving no room for discussion. "I'm buying the house today, and I want to do it through her." Alex nodded immediately, flustered but eager. "Of course, absolutely. Monica, make sure you take excellent care of our distinguished guest." Chloe stood off to the side, her face stiff, her lips twitching with suppressed frustration. She watched me walk away, seething, then muttered under her breath, "Just a glorified errand maid pretending she's somebody." I ignored her completely and pointed to the scale model at the center of the showroom. "I want to see this one," I told Monica. The moment I laid eyes on that villa, I knew. Soaring ceilings in the living room, a spacious backyard garden, a sunroom spanning over 200 square feet. Most importantly, it was fully furnished and move-in ready. "I'll take this one," I said without hesitation. "Let's get the paperwork started." Monica's eyes lit up with excitement. "Mom, are you sure you don't want to tour a few more options? I'm free. I'd be happy to show you others." "No need," I replied. "This one is more than enough." She could barely contain her joy. "Mom, this will be the first sale I've ever closed. You're my lucky charm. We headed to the signing area, and as I reviewed the paperwork, a low murmur started behind me. Damn, she just signed without a second thought. 1.5 million, didn't even blink. Money talks. Huh, that's what real wealth looks like. Don't be fooled, someone muttered. Didn't Chloe say she's just a housekeeper? Probably flashing around her employer's money. These days, even servants know how to put on a show. Seriously, what kind of employer would trust a maid with that kind of cash? Millions. Then Chloe's voice cut through the whispers, laced with that gossipy venom she wore so well. Oh, you have no idea. She's not your average housekeeper. No? Then what is she? She's one of those living assistants for wealthy old men. You know, not just dusting and mopping, if you catch my drift. No way. At her age. That's just shameless. Ugh, some people will sell anything for money. If her family knew, wouldn't they be humiliated? I sat down the contract and turned toward Monica. Monica, I said with a steady smile, could you please get Alex for me again? I'd like to purchase another property. The room went completely silent. It was as if the air itself froze. Monica's eyes widened, her voice trembling with disbelief. Ma'am, you're sure you want another one? That's right, I said calmly. One to live in, one as an investment. Then I smiled a little wider. Although I do have a small favor I'd like Alex to help me with. Alex returned swiftly, his smile brighter than before, practically glowing with enthusiasm. Hello again, ma'am. Please let me know what I can do for you. I've confirmed the purchase of the first property, I said. I'm ready to sign the contract, and I'd like to add a second unit as well. But, I paused, my tone turning cold, I expect your team to address the inappropriate behavior of certain staff members. Alex's smile faded. His gaze swept across the room and quickly landed on Chloe. Chloe, he said sharply, are you causing trouble again? Apologize to the client now. Chloe lifted her chin defiantly, refusing to back down. Why should I apologize? I only told the truth. She used to be a housekeeper, one of those living types who caters only to rich old men. And don't look at me like that. Her son said it himself. I slowly lifted my head, eyes narrowing as I stared directly at her. You're saying my son told you that? Then let me tell you something in return. He also once said that your little portfolio of closed deals didn't come from your so-called skills, but from the nights you spent in bed with your clients. Is that true? Chloe's face drained of color. Her lips trembled. You're lying. That's slander. Oh, didn't you just slander me a few minutes ago? Now you suddenly understand what defamation means? I turned to Alex, who immediately picked up on the cue. His expression turned grim. Chloe, that's enough. Security, escort her out of the building. And as of today, you're terminated. Chloe panicked. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over. Alex, I wasn't lying. She really used to be a cleaner. But Alex's tone remained firm. You've violated company conduct policies in a very serious way. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. I raised my hand to stop the security guards from moving. Hold on, I said calmly. She's not going anywhere just yet. She publicly defamed me, and I'm not letting this slide. Right then and there, I took out my phone and dialed. Hello. Yes, this is the police department. I'd like to file a report for defamation and public harassment. 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived at the showroom. After hearing my account and reviewing the incident, they issued Chloe a formal warning and made it very clear if she didn't offer a public apology, I had every right to press legal charges. Cornered and shaking with rage, Chloe finally mumbled through clenched teeth. I'm sorry. She shot me and Monica one last hateful glance before storming off, her eyes burning with envy, especially when she saw Monica preparing to close the second sale. The same Monica she'd looked down on just an hour ago, now the star closer of the day. By the end of it, I signed contracts for both properties, paid in full without so much as a pause. Monica stood by my side, eyes shimmering with emotion. She could barely get the words out. Mom, I can't thank you enough. I've been working here 3 months without a single sale, and today, 2 units back to back. You're honestly my miracle." To show her gratitude, she insisted on personally arranging deep cleaning and moving prep for me. I gladly accepted. For the first time in years, I felt truly light, as if all the humiliation, resentment, and bitterness had been swept away, like the dust outside my new villa doors. That evening, just as I returned to my hotel, my phone rang. "Mom, so what the hell did you do to ruin Chloe's job? Her whole family is coming after us now, demanding answers. How do you plan to fix this?" I answered breezily, "Let them come. That's your problem now. Didn't I already tell you we're done? I owe you nothing. You stirred up trouble and now expect us to deal with the fallout. That's not right." That made my blood boil. Trouble? Are you kidding me? Chloe defamed me in public. She brought it on herself. The police were there. You think they just showed up for fun? If this turns into a bigger mess, don't think you'll walk away clean either. Ethan went quiet for a beat. When he spoke again, his tone had softened noticeably. All right. Let's just move on. By the way," there was that hesitant tone, that calculated shift in interest. "So, Mum, who's your new employer really? They must be seriously loaded, and they seem to be treating you pretty well too, huh?" I laughed silently to myself. There it was again. The scent of money, and he was sniffing around like a bloodhound. "It doesn't matter who they are, it has nothing to do with you. Ethan, let me say it one more time. We're done for good." And with that, I ended the call and blocked every single number from him, Nicole, and their entire family. But what I didn't expect was that just a few days after moving into my new home, I ran into someone I hadn't planned on seeing again, Susan. That afternoon, I was at a high-end piano showroom downtown, browsing options for a grand piano. I had just settled onto the bench, ready to test out the keys, when the front doors swung open and a flurry of footsteps echoed through the space. In walked Susan, surrounded by her ever-present circle of social friends, their voices loud and shrill with self-importance. "What kind of store is this?" Susan scoffed, "letting just anyone sit down and bang on a piano. How unprofessional." Her eyes landed on me, and the sarcasm practically dripped from her smile. "Margaret, did you even wash your hands before touching that instrument? Weren't you in healthcare work all these years? God knows what kind of germs you've got crawling all over your fingers. Who would have thought such an expensive piano could be so casually contaminated?" Her little clique chuckled and whispered among themselves, eyeing me with barely disguised contempt. "So that's the housekeeper-in-law you were talking about?" one of them asked, not even bothering to lower her voice. "I bet she can't afford to buy one, so she comes here just to pretend. How embarrassing." Another woman, her hair piled into a dramatic bun and oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, gave me a disdainful once-over. Ugh, nothing more irritating than someone trying to act classy while carrying knockoff handbags. The 2 sales associates at the showroom exchanged a subtle glance, clearly uncomfortable. One of them approached me and offered a warm, professional smile. "Please feel free to continue trying the piano, ma'am. That's exactly what they're here for. No purchase required." I nodded politely, then turned back to the sheet music and prepared to play, trying to ease the growing tension in the room. The other sales rep approached Susan and her group. "Ladies, welcome. Is there a particular model you'd like to see? I'd be happy to walk you through our selection." Susan shot me a glance full of frost, then replied sharply, "We were going to take a look, but now I'm not so sure. Clearly this store doesn't care about its instruments or its clients." I gave the store associate a calm smile and said clearly, "I'll need a bit more time to try a few. I fully intend to make a purchase today." The woman with the buns scoffed and dropped into a nearby sofa, arms crossed. "Sure you do. I'll just sit right here and watch how you talk your way out of this. Can't wait to see how you slither off without buying anything." Susan tugged her friend's arm. "Come on, let's go somewhere else. Just being near people like this puts me in a bad mood." But I knew better. Susan had already heard from Chloe that I'd bought 2 villas. She was clearly unsure whether to believe it, and afraid I might prove her wrong again. But her friend wasn't so easily swayed. "I'm staying right here," the bun-haired woman said with a smirk. "I won't sleep tonight if I don't see this woman fall flat on her face." Her words seemed to rally the rest of the group. They all stayed, waiting for what they assumed would be an entertaining disaster. I chose one of my favorite pieces and let my fingers fall gently on the keys. The notes floated into the room, soft and steady, the melody of Moonlight Sonata flowing through the air. The bun-haired woman twisted her mouth in mockery and snorted. "What even is that? Sounds like noise. Who taught her to play? She thinks she belongs in a piano store with that mess. Give me a break." But before I could respond, the sales associate by my side started clapping, genuine admiration in his eyes. "Ma'am, that was beautiful. Honestly, that's one of the most moving renditions of Moonlight Sonata I've heard in a long time." The bun-haired woman rolled her eyes so hard, she nearly tipped over. "Oh, please. If she was that talented, she wouldn't be stuck in whatever dead-end life she's living now. Your flattery is a little too obvious, sweetheart." Just then, a few young people stepped into the showroom. They didn't say a word, simply stood behind me, quietly listening. The moment I lifted my fingers off the keys, a round of spontaneous applause erupted from behind. Wow, that was incredible. I've studied piano for many years, and I still can't bring out that level of emotion in Moonlight Sonata. Seriously, you captured the whole hazy, dreamlike mood so effortlessly. You're amazing. Susan stood nearby, her brow tightening, eyes narrowing in visible confusion. She couldn't seem to wrap her head around it. How could someone she'd always looked down on play with such grace, such skill? Truth was, I owed this moment of peace, of music, to my late employer. She came from a prestigious family, the most elegant, sincere woman I've ever met. She never once looked down on me. In fact, she treated me more like a younger sister than an employee. Whenever she had free time, she invited me to join her in learning music, painting, literature, and I never brushed it off. I studied with dedication, deeply grateful for her generosity and patience. Over the years, she didn't just change my lifestyle, she transformed my entire spirit. I continued playing, letting the keys carry my thoughts while the bun-haired woman's face soured under the growing stream of praise. She lowered her head, clearly unsettled. Then, in one last desperate attempt to save face, she snapped her head up. "So what if you can play one song? Big deal. If you're really that impressive, pay for the piano right now." I had already made my choice. Calmly, I handed my card to the associate. "Thank you, ma'am," he said cheerfully. "That'll be $155,000. I entered my PIN. Transaction approved. "Ma'am, may I have your name to finalize the invoice?" he asked. "Of course," I said, and wrote it down. "Margaret Turner." The bun-haired woman blanched. Her head jerked towards Susan in disbelief. "You said she worked for someone else, that the villas she bought weren't even hers." Susan's face shifted. She walked over, her expression caught between disbelief and something far more tangled. You bought this piano yourself? And those 2 villas, those were yours too?" I smiled. "The invoices and contracts have my name on them. If they're not mine, then whose would they be?" "Yours." Her face twisted instantly, a storm of shock, envy, suspicion, and bitter regret flickering across it. "Margaret, you were just a housekeeper. Where did all that money come from?" "Every dollar I spend was earned legally and rightfully." My voice was sharp, cold. Susan scoffed. "Oh, please, you must have done something shady to get it." The bun-haired woman chimed in immediately. "Yeah, maybe she's a scammer. That's how people make fast money these days." No sooner had those words left her mouth than another woman who'd been quiet all this time suddenly snapped, "What? Scammer? Don't even joke about that." She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking. "Hello 911, I need the police. There's a con artist here." Before anyone could react, she hung up and stormed toward me, trying to grab my clothes in a fit of rage. The store staff rushed to hold her back. She was crying, shouting, completely hysterical. And finally, I understood the reason behind her outburst. She'd been swindled out of over $100,000 6 months ago. She'd never gotten it back, and the pain still festered so deeply inside her that the mere mention of scam shattered her control. Her fury wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at a shadow from her past. The police arrived quickly, and to my surprise, it was the same 2 officers I had met the day I purchased the villas. One of them raised his brows in recognition, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Oh, it's you again, Mom." I nodded politely, but before I could speak, the curly-haired woman jumped up and shouted, "She's a scammer, officer. Arrest her right now." The officer's smile faded. He turned serious. "Mom, do you have any proof of this accusation?" "Proof?" she snapped. "Of course not. I'm just providing a tip. You should investigate her yourselves." I mean, come on. How could a housemate afford villas and grand pianos? Does that sound normal to you? The officer sighed, spreading his hands. Maybe she won the lottery. It happens. Susan immediately jumped in, her tone sharp. Her? Winning the lottery? Don't be ridiculous. She's never had a lucky day in her life. Grew up without parents, failed marriage, low-class jobs. People like her don't get lucky. They get desperate. She has no education, no career path. What else could she have done besides some shady business to get that kind of money? The officer's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I advise you to watch your words. Accusations without evidence fall under defamation and personal attacks. We can open a case if needed." Susan's face paled. She clammed up instantly. A swirl of emotions stirred inside me. Frustration, pain, anger, but mostly clarity. Life hadn't been easy. I'd grown up alone. After the divorce, I bent over backwards to support a son who never appreciated a thing I did. And now, the very people who'd once enjoyed my sacrifices were using my lowest points as ammunition to attack me. If I had a nemesis in life, it was Susan, her daughter Nicole, and Ethan. They weren't just ungrateful. They were the real curses in my story. But now, I finally saw them for who they truly were. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and without a word, turned the screen towards Susan, holding it up so she and everyone else could see. "You don't want to see me happy? Tough luck. Looks like heaven had other plans. See the over 8 million? All legal, all mine. No dirty secrets, no tricks, just blessings you'll never understand. If that makes you sick, well, I hope it ruins your appetite. You want to accuse me of sleeping my way to the top? Go ahead. Sue me. I'll be waiting." Susan's water cup slipped from her hand and crashed to the floor with a loud clang. I could almost hear the crack of her pride shattering. 8 million? How the hell do you have that kind of money? Her voice shook, panic breaking through her disbelief. Then her expression twisted, almost like something had just clicked. "Oh, now I get it. That's why you cut ties with your son. You got rich and dumped him like trash. How heartless, Margaret. You're unbelievable." I turned to her, my tone sharp, unwavering. "Don't twist the story, Susan. I was ready to leave every cent to your daughter and my son. That was my plan. But then you two decided I was a burden. The minute I quit my job, you pushed me out of the house like garbage. You think I forgot that house you're living in. Every dollar that bought it came from me. And not only did you kick me out, you wanted me to scrub floors at a second-rate nursing home just to keep earning for your family. You even suggested I go work for some old rich man as his living servant. God knows what kind of services you had in mind. Tell me, Susan, do you even have a shred of decency left in you? I could have given your whole family a life of luxury, but no, not a chance. You ruined it yourselves." I turned to the growing crowd of onlookers. "Tell me, doesn't this pack of ingrates deserve everything they've lost?" The crowd's energy shifted. Their eyes, once filled with gossip, now brimmed with judgment aimed squarely at Susan and her friends. Susan's face burned red, like a con artist caught mid-scheme. You're lying. We never said you should go work for some old man." "Oh," I said calmly. "Should I play the recording for everyone here? Let them hear your exact words?" Her face went pale, and for a second, I saw real fear in her eyes. That recording is probably edited. I'm not listening to that garbage. Her voice cracked as she turned away, retreating toward the exit. Margaret, you're cruel to the core. You'll get what's coming to you someday. And with that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I finally exhaled. It was over for now, but I knew better than to think it was truly finished. With that much money on the line, people like Susan and Ethan never stay quiet for long. What I didn't expect was how quickly Ethan would crawl back into the picture. The very next morning, the concierge delivered a massive bouquet of flowers, claiming someone had left it at the gate for me. I frowned, dragged the flowers inside, and sifted through them. Right in the center was a card. Wishing you a lovely weekend. Love, your son Ethan. I nearly burst out laughing, disgusted to the core. It was so shameless, it was almost comical. Without hesitation, I picked up the bouquet and tossed it straight into the kitchen trash can. Then I snapped a photo. Crushed petals, bent stems, and the crumpled card, all in one frame, and sent it to the gatehouse. From now on, refuse anything sent by this person. Also, kindly forward him this picture. I didn't just want him rejected, I wanted him humiliated. Sure enough, I never received another bouquet from him again. But he didn't give up, he just escalated. He began waiting outside the gated community every single day, rain or shine, workday or weekend. He'd be there, lurking, desperate. Every time I came or went, he'd put on another pitiful act, like some character in a cheap tragedy. One day, he even dropped to his knees on the sidewalk, crying hysterically. "Mom, please don't be angry anymore. Come home. I was wrong, Mom. No matter what, I'm still your son. How can you be this cold to me?" I didn't even bother looking at him. His theatrics only made my skin crawl. Eventually, I got so sick of the scene that I hired a full-time driver. Every day, I sat in the back with the windows up, gliding past the front gate straight into my villa's garage. No eye contact, no conversation, no chance for him to reach me. Ethan kept it up for 2 full weeks. But once it was clear I wasn't budging, he finally gave up. At least, I thought he did. Instead, he changed tactics. He went digging through and somehow managed to contact my ex-husband, Richard, who was once Ethan's father too. That's when things truly began to spiral in a way I hadn't anticipated. Ethan wasn't trying to reconcile anymore. He was trying to control me, crush me, break me down completely. It became obvious, if he couldn't get what he wanted, he'd rather see me destroyed. One afternoon my phone rang. It was Richard. We hadn't spoken in over 20 years. I had no idea how he even got my number. "I just thought I'd give you a heads up," he said casually. "Ethan came to see me. He cried and begged me to talk you into going back home. I don't know what happened between you two, and frankly, I told him that's not my business. I just reminded him I'm not his biological father. I even added that whatever's going on between the two of you has nothing to do with me. I'm an outsider." But he insisted I was lying. He even showed up at my office, making a scene. I had no choice but to take a paternity test to shut him up. I didn't tell him the full truth, though. I kept my promise from all those years ago. I didn't reveal his real background. So bottom line is, he now knows I'm not his father, but you're still his one and only mother. I hung up, already bracing myself. I knew it was only a matter of time before Ethan came knocking on my door again. When he did, I'd be ready. I'd tell him everything. The truth he was so desperate to avoid. I'd tell him to go find the mother who abandoned him in a dumpster and stop trying to tear my life apart. But that confrontation never came. Instead, Ethan took a darker turn. A turn I hadn't anticipated. Roughly a week later, I noticed something strange. The way people in the neighborhood looked at me had changed. Their glances lingered longer, their smiles grew thinner, more forced. I brushed it off at first, until Monica called me one afternoon. "Margaret, I just wanted to say I know you're a good person. Please don't let what people are saying upset you." I was confused. What are people saying? That's when I learned what had really been happening. I'd become an internet sensation, but not the good kind. Ethan had started live streaming daily on a popular social media platform. His channel title, How My Mother Abandoned Me. I clicked in and saw the full picture. He hadn't outright accused me of being a mistress or anything scandalous. No, he'd gone for something much more insidious. He'd crafted a manipulative sob story, painting himself as a heartbroken, abandoned son while twisting me into the cold, ruthless, money-hungry villain. In his streams, he said things like, "My mother never really loved me. I worked so hard, studied so hard, and she wouldn't even support me in the smallest ways. The year I got into college, she left for another city to work as a live-in assistant for rich people, leaving me to live alone in a tiny rental apartment. When I got married, she didn't contribute a single dollar. Even when my wife got pregnant, she never offered a shred of help. Now that she's suddenly rich, she's cut me off completely, like I never existed. I don't even want money. I just want her to acknowledge me as her son, but she won't even say my name. She lives in a mansion now, rides in luxury cars, and enjoys an upper-class life while I get judged and humiliated on the streets." The comments section exploded. People split into two camps. Some sympathized with him, others called me heartless, and of course, there were the instigators. A mother like that doesn't deserve to be called one. She should be ashamed. He's so pitiful. I'd do anything to give him the love he never had. His live stream blew up. His follower count skyrocketed. He even started selling merchandise and products on his channel, riding the wave of pity donations from his so-called supporters. "Will be the warmth your mother never gave you. You deserve better, sweet boy. She doesn't deserve happiness." And then things turned even uglier. People began digging into my personal life. My name, my photo, my address, all of it started circulating in comment sections and reposts. I had officially become the face of a social media villain, the most heartless mother on the internet. And then, that evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was my lawyer. "Margaret, we can proceed with legal action right away," my lawyer said. "We can file for removal of defamatory content, demand a public apology, and pursue compensation for damages." I paused for a few seconds, then smiled calmly. "No rush. Let him perform a little longer. I plan to take this into my own hands first." That same night, I registered my own account on StreamNet and launched my own live channel. I titled it, "So This Is the Mom Who Abandoned Ethan." First, I dropped into Ethan's stream and sent several thousand in donations, instantly grabbing attention and spiking the live chat feed. Then I sent a message across the screen for everyone to see. "Hi everyone. I'm the heartless mother Ethan's been talking about. He's been crying for weeks, saying I cut off his financial support. Come over to my channel. I'll show you the truth. Tonight, I'm giving away $100,000 in cash prizes. Join if you want. First come, first served." Within seconds, a flood of viewers jumped to my stream. Traffic surged wildly, and I started sending out the promised rewards. The comments section exploded with excitement. "Thank you, Sugar Mama. This is the real content queen." Taking notes. "She's more loving than my own mom." Riding the wave of viral momentum, I officially began my live broadcast. I didn't waste time sugarcoating anything. I spoke straight into the camera. First of all, yes, I did cut off financial ties with Ethan, but that doesn't make me heartless, and it certainly doesn't mean I abandoned him. People deserve the full story. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving him. I walked away because his greed became unbearable. When I first received the inheritance from my late employer, my intention was to leave it all to Ethan and his wife. But do you know what their response was? Instead of gratitude, they accused me of wanting to freeload and teamed up to throw me out of the house. They even suggested I move in with a random elderly man as his living assistant, because in their minds, my only value was continuing to work and funnel money into their household. To them, I wasn't a mother. I was a bank account. Or as I spoke, I displayed a scan of the trust documents from my former employer, a legally notarized statement showing I'd inherited approximately more than $8 million in assets. The money I have came from a legitimate trust left to me by a woman who treated me like family. She had no children of her own and made me her sole beneficiary. The comments blew up again. She lost 9 million? What kind of employer does that? Finally, karma rewarding a good heart. This isn't cold, it's clarity. Of course, not everyone was convinced. A few skeptics popped up. Still, you're his mother, aren't you supposed to support your child? Cutting him off after marriage sounds pretty cold-blooded. I replied calmly, without blinking. Let me ask you this, does supporting a child mean you're supposed to be their personal ATM forever? I raised him alone since he was 1 year old, paid his school fees, bought him a house. What did I get in return? Suspicion, rejection, disrespect, and being forced out of my own home. They wanted me to keep working like a machine to subsidize their lifestyle while treating me like a burden. Then I dropped the final card, an audio recording of Ethan on the phone, trying to arrange for me to become a live-in assistant for an elderly man. The call had been captured by the elderly man's household security system. It was undeniable proof. The comments exploded again. Unbelievable. This isn't just mooching, it's financial abuse. Cutting him off isn't cruelty, it's survival. This is what weaponized guilt looks like. He's not crying for love, he's crying for money. Good for you, Mom. That son deserved to be cut off. I knew this was only the beginning. Ethan didn't miss a mother, he missed his money supply. In this war, it had only just begun. I looked at the flood of comments on the screen and let out a small, quiet laugh. Then I leaned toward the camera and spoke directly to the audience. The truth is, there was never any need to cut ties with Ethan. Instantly, question marks filled the comment feed. I continued calmly, because Ethan was never my biological son to begin with. I adopted him when I was volunteering at a local orphanage. He was just 1 year old then, born with a severe congenital heart defect and abandoned by his birth parents in a dumpster. He was barely clinging to life when I found him. I brought him home out of pure compassion. I spent every penny I had to get him medical care, and my divorce from my ex-husband. That wasn't about infidelity. It was because he insisted on having a biological child and refused to continue raising Ethan. I was given a choice. Send Ethan back to the orphanage or leave my marriage and raise him on my own. I chose Ethan. I gave up my marriage, gave up the chance to have my own children, just to give him a chance at life. I worked overnight shifts, waited tables, cleaned homes, whatever it took. I scraped and saved until he was healthy again. I put him through college. I even bought him a house with my hard-earned money. And what did I get in return? He refused to let me live in that very house. He kicked me out like a stranger. Now he's slandering me online, claiming I abandoned him, and even spreading rumors that I slept my way to wealth. Tell me, how should I respond to someone like that? As I spoke, I uploaded a series of images: hospital bills, medical invoices, school tuition receipts, public transit tickets, all the fragments of a life spent giving, a lifetime of sacrifice captured in paper and ink. The comments exploded. He's vile. Who does that to a woman who saved his life? He used his adoptive mother like a sponge, then threw her away. Disgusting. Living in the house she paid for and still kicked her out. Unbelievable. God gave him life. She gave him everything else, and he turned around and stabbed her in the back. The backlash was immediate. Viewers rushed back into Ethan's stream and began flooding his comments section with outrage. How could we ever support someone like you? Shame on you. You played the victim while bleeding your mother dry. You're the heartless one, not her. Ethan's face turned visibly pale on camera. Why are you all believing her? He shouted. She's lying. If I wasn't her real son, why did she do all that for me? She's manipulating you. No one would go that far for a child that isn't theirs. Back on my stream, more viewers demanded hard proof. Without hesitation, I uploaded a scanned copy of the official adoption certificate. This is the government-issued record, verified, public, and authentic. The comments section erupted once again. That's it. End of discussion. She's telling the truth. This isn't just betrayal, it's moral bankruptcy. He used her love, her money, her life, and still tried to destroy her. Report him. He doesn't deserve a platform. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Ethan doubled down. So what if I wasn't her real kid? She didn't have to save me. I never asked her to. Maybe if she hadn't taken me in, I would have been adopted by a real family. She ruined my life. She never should have interfered with my fate. That was the final straw. The internet exploded. You're mad she saved you? That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. Let the whole world see this monster's true face. Report him now. In less than a day, public opinion turned completely. Ethan went from abandoned victim to ungrateful parasite feeding on his adoptive mother's blood. His streaming channel was permanently suspended by the platform that same night. My lawyer filed a formal defamation and harassment lawsuit against him, demanding financial compensation for damages. We also filed for an injunction to legally prohibit him from making any further defamatory statements or attacking me through social media platforms. Eventually, the court ruled in our favor. Ethan was found guilty of violating cyber safety and defamation laws. He was ordered to pay damages and cover all legal fees. His streaming privileges were revoked. His social media accounts permanently banned. Me? I was finally completely free. There was no longer any trace of Ethan in my life, and there never would be again. Another 6 months passed, and I finally reclaimed the house that had once been mine through a meticulous legal process. My attorney team successfully reversed the property ownership. The day everything was finalized, I stood in the living room, staring at the familiar curtains, watching sunlight spill across the hardwood floor. For the first time in years, I felt truly light, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for decades. A few days later, Susan's daughter, Ethan's wife, filed for divorce. She signed the papers in her lawyer's office with complete composure, not uttering a single extra word. It was clear she'd seen him for who he really was, a man who whined about being wronged but never took responsibility, full of resentment but completely devoid of self-awareness. And just like that, Ethan vanished from my life entirely. I didn't ask about where he went, and I had no interest in looking back. Years passed. Then one day, while chatting with an old friend at a cafe, she casually mentioned, "I heard Ethan ran off to Canada. He's always online bragging about how free and easy life is over there." Out of curiosity, I searched his name online. What I found was haunting. The video footage showed him disheveled and hunched beside a trash bin on a street corner, gnawing on a piece of moldy bread with vacant, unfocused eyes. Sometimes he'd break into a manic smile. Other times, he'd burst into uncontrollable sobs that tore through his whole body. He'd lost his mind. The same man who once stood in front of a camera, painting me as a villain, fishing for sympathy, selling sorrow for attention, had become exactly what he deserved to be, a ghost on the margins of real life. But I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel anger anymore either. He had simply become the sum of his own choices. No amount of followers could save him. No amount of lies could keep his story standing. He lost the sympathy he'd stolen. He ruined the integrity he never valued. And eventually, life did what it always does. It caught up. As for me, I was finally done with a battle that had drained me for over 30 years. The 2 villas I'd bought on impulse during that dark chapter, I sold them during the housing market upswing and walked away with a tidy profit. What once symbolized fury and defiance had turned into the foundation of my next chapter. Eventually, I moved to a quiet lakeside town on the western edge of the city. It wasn't the most expensive neighborhood, but it was everything I'd ever wanted. Sunlight flooded the windows. My garden bloomed with wisteria and roses. The kitchen always smelled of my favorite dark roast coffee. My easel stood beneath the trees, waiting for lazy afternoons of painting. The air was clean, the world slow, and life gentle. No one called me mom anymore, just to demand something. No one accused me of being cold. No one claimed I hadn't done enough. For the first time, I could hear my own breath in the music, in the sunlight. For the first time, I finally belonged to myself. Sometimes people still ask me, "Do you regret adopting Ethan?" I used to think long and hard about that question, but now, when I hear it, I just smile softly and shake my head. No, I say. I don't regret it. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. Learning to protect myself was the most important lesson I ever learned. In the second half of my life, I was never a perfect person, never a saint, but I became something far better, a woman who finally lived for herself. And it turned out that wasn't too late at all. How did that story make you feel? If you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? Share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear from you. But don't go anywhere just yet, because the next story, it's even more powerful, packed with unexpected twists, raw emotions, and moments that will catch you completely off guard. Are you ready? Let's jump right in. The clinking of forks against plates filled the eerie silence that had settled over our Wednesday night dinner. I stared across the table at Rowan, my husband of 6 years, searching his face for any hint of the loving man I had married. But his eyes avoided mine as he shoveled pasta into his mouth with unusual urgency. My gaze drifted to his phone, lying next to his plate. A notification blinked tauntingly, as though begging me to swipe it open. Against my better judgment, I surrendered to temptation. Rowan didn't even notice as I leaned over and thumbed the unlock code. His acting skills had become that convincing. The message glared at me like a lurid accusation. Can't wait to feel you inside me again. Meet at our place in an hour. The sender's name, Marcella. I read it again, my heart thudding as the words burrowed into my consciousness, like shards of broken glass. So this is why he'd been distant lately, coming home late without explanation, his attention continuously wandering to whatever sordid thoughts consumed his mind. "Everything okay, honey?" Rowan asked, snapping me out of my daze with that perfectly innocent tone he'd perfected over God knows how long. I slid his phone across the table, unable to find any words. His eyes went wide as his mask finally slipped, allowing a flash of panic to streak across his face. In that moment, I realized the man I thought I knew had been an illusion all along. "Alara, I can explain," he started, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "Don't bother," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of heartbreak and rage. "Just tell me one thing. How long has this been going on?" Rowan opened his mouth, then closed it again. His shoulders slumped in apparent resignation. 6 months, he finally admitted, the words landing like a kick to my gut. 6 months. Half a year of lies and deception while I blissfully carried on, tending to our home and planning a future with a man who had already checked out of our marriage. "Who is she?" I demanded, though I already knew the answer. Marcella, the beautiful 20-something interior designer that had worked on a project in Rowan's office. He let out a bitter chuckle. "Does it really matter? She's someone who made me feel things I haven't felt in years." His words lacerated what little remained of my heart. I wanted to crumple to the floor in anguish, to scream until my throat was raw, but I refused to grant him the satisfaction of seeing me so thoroughly broken. Mustering every ounce of strength, I rose from my chair and headed for the door, grabbing my purse along the way. "Where are you going?" he called after me, the first traces of concern entering his voice. I turned back to face him, my vision blurred with unshed tears. "I'm leaving," I stated, my voice dripping with finality. "And when I get back, you'd better be gone, because I don't even recognize you anymore." Yanking the door open, I stormed out into the night, each step away from my sham of a marriage fortifying my resolve. I had been a fool to believe in the picture-perfect life we had constructed together, but that illusion had finally shattered, irrevocably broken beyond repair. I spent a restless night at a hotel, tears streaming down my face as the full weight of Rowan's betrayal crushed me. How could the man I loved, the man who vowed to cherish me, have so callously thrown away our marriage? The next morning, blinded by hurt but determined to take action, I contacted a private investigator recommended by a friend who had gone through an ugly divorce. Within 24 hours, he had uncovered a sordid trail of evidence that left me shaking with rage and disgust. Rowan hadn't just been having a fling with that vapid interior designer Marcella. The investigator's report revealed multiple affairs spanning over a year, including emails, credit card statements, and dated photos of Rowan entering different hotels with various women. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Davies," the investigator said, as he laid out the damning dossier on my kitchen table. "Your husband has been quite prolific in his indiscretions." I clenched my fists, fighting back waves of nausea. One name and face in particular leapt out at me. Marcella, the woman whose taunting text had blown the lid off this whole sordid affair. "I want to know everything about her," I told the investigator, my voice hardening with fury. "Where she lives, where she works, all of it." 2 days later, he provided me with an address. A swanky apartment in an upscale part of town that I could never have afforded on my own. Rowan must have been funneling money to keep his mistress living in luxury while I stayed at home obliviously. Consumed by a reckless impulse, I drove to Marcella's place, letting myself into the lobby with the temporary code the investigator acquired. Her door was unlocked, the perfect opportunity to corner the woman who had helped decimate my life. I stormed inside, greeted by a lavish interior that instantly confirmed my husband's lover didn't lack for expensive tastes. "Hello," a silky voice called from another room. "Is that you, Rowan?" I clenched my fists as the lithe, raven-haired seductress glided into view, clad in nothing but a silk robe that clung hungrily to her skin. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. "You," I spat through gritted teeth. "You're the bitch who destroyed my marriage." Rather than having the decency to look ashamed, she arched one perfectly groomed eyebrow as a mocking smirk played across her plump lips. "Well, if it isn't the famous Mrs. Davies, I was wondering when you'd show up to get a good look at the woman your pathetic husband can't resist." White-hot rage engulfed me, and before I could stop myself, my hand lashed out, cracking across her smug face with a resounding slap. She gasped, recoiling in shock, and I felt a savage thrill at having finally wiped that superior look off her face. "You're going to regret that," she hissed, one hand covering her rapidly reddening cheek. "Wait until Rowan hears about this." "Rowan is leaving me for you, isn't he?" I fired back, advancing on her until she backed into the wall. "Well, let me give you a reality check, you home-wrecking snake. He's broke. He's been spending our money on hotels, gifts, this expensive apartment, all to court a little gold-digging bitch like you." Revulsion flickered across her features before her mask of arrogance fell back into place. "We'll see about that," she sneered. "This isn't over, Mrs. Davies. Not by a long shot." I watched in disgust as she slinked away, my desire for vengeance burning hotter than ever before. "No," I thought bitterly as I stormed out. "This is just the beginning." After my explosive showdown with Marcella, I was seething, a volcano of pain and rage that threatened to erupt at any moment. I stormed back home, unable to think of anything but tearing that smug look off the home wrecker's face once and for all. Rowan was already there, having moved his essentials into the guest bedroom at some point during my vengeful errand. His eyes went wide when he saw me storm through the front door. "Alara, what's going on?" he asked, alarmed by the thunderous expression on my face. I didn't bother responding with words. Instead, I flung the damning evidence compiled by the private investigator across the room, letting the printed emails, photos, and financial statements flutter to the floor like confetti. Rowan paled as he scanned the incriminating documents, seemingly comprehending the full depth of his sins for the first time. "You've been having multiple affairs," I stated, keeping my voice dangerously level. "For over a year, by the looks of it. And that's not even the worst part." I held up a different sheath of papers, these ones detailing the exorbitant sums Rowan had been funneling into a hidden account, no doubt to bankroll his luxurious trysts with his mistresses. "The money, Rowan," I hissed. "How could you steal from our own accounts to wine and dine your whores?" Instead of contrition, anger flickered across his features. He drew himself up to his full height, anger radiating off him. "Don't you dare take that sanctimonious tone with me," he shot back. "You're the one who drove me to this, Alara. Our marriage has been a miserable, lifeless husk for years. Can you really blame me for finally finding happiness elsewhere?" My jaw dropped at the outrageous reversal, my shock quickly hardening into white-hot fury. "Finding happiness?" I echoed in disbelief. "With that home-wrecking bimbo Marcella? She's not some deep, enlightened woman, Rowan. She's a manipulative little gold digger who's been bleeding you dry." For the first time, doubt crept across his expression, but whatever he thought of my accusation, his stubbornness kept him from acknowledging it. "That's enough," he said coldly. "I want a divorce, Alara. In fact, I already contacted my lawyer to start the process. I'm done with your judgmental nagging and this miserable existence of a marriage." The blunt words pierced what little remained of my heart. I recoiled, feeling the room start to spin around me as the weight of my shattered world came crashing down. Through blurred vision, I could make out Rowan gathering up his belongings and storming out the door without a backward glance. Just like that, it was over. My dreams, my life as I knew it, obliterated in one fell swoop by the man who once vowed to love and cherish me until death did us part. Some vow. Crumpling to the floor amidst the scattered remnants of my marriage, I finally surrendered to the urge to scream, an anguished wail that cleaved through the shell of numbness enveloping me. I screamed until my throat was raw, purging my soul of the trauma that had been inflicted upon it. But as my howls subsided, an uncharacteristic sense of clarity settled over me. Through my bleary gaze, I noticed a familiar rectangular shape peeking out from one of the folders, the deed to our family home, bearing my name and mine alone. In the midst of my father's estate planning years ago, he had insisted on putting the house solely in my ownership, just in case. At the time, I thought his distrust of Rowan was merely a symptom of his cantankerous nature. But now, as the first embers of vengeance kindled in my chest, I gave silent thanks for my father's foresight. I wouldn't be left with nothing after this devastation. No, with the deed secured in my hands, I would strike back and rebuild from the ashes Rowan had strewn around me. If he wanted war, so be it, for I was just getting started. The next few days passed in a blur of anguish and fury. I spent many sleepless nights poring over the file compiled by the private investigator, my eyes burning from the effort of holding back tears. But those tears wouldn't solve anything. Only decisive action would ensure I emerged from this nightmare with my pride and financial security intact. Armed with reams of evidence detailing Rowan's serial infidelity and financial misconduct, I marched into the office of Diane Hastings, one of the most tenacious divorce attorneys in the city. She was a shark in kitten heels, and I would need every ounce of her ferocity. Diane flipped through the documents with a practiced eye, her polished veneer cracking just slightly as she absorbed the lurid details. "Good God," she muttered, removing her glasses to stare at me in disbelief. "I've seen some philandering dirtbags in my time, but your husband is a prime specimen." I managed a weak smile at her candor. "Can you help me, Diane? I want to take him for everything he's worth." A feral grin spread across her lips. "With evidence like this, he won't know what hit him." Over the next few weeks, Diane and I constructed an ironclad strategy to decimate Rowan's finances and hold him accountable for his prolific indiscretions. We would not only freeze any assets he'd stashed away to fund his tawdry second life, but pursue a punishing alimony figure given the extent of his betrayal and financial misdeeds. "This Marcella woman is the key," Diane told me, tapping her pen against a photo of the smug homewrecker. "If we can establish that she knowingly carried on an affair with your husband to extract monetary gain, we can pursue her personal assets as well. And trust me, that interior design gig pays for a lot of silicone." My heart raced at the prospect of making Marcella face the same reckoning that Rowan was about to receive. Ever since our venomous confrontation at her apartment, she had slithered out of sight, no doubt waiting for her lover's bottomless wallet to continue funding her lavish lifestyle. Well, she would be in for a rude awakening, just like the scorned wife in the meantime. Rowan had gone suspiciously silent, no doubt stewing in denial while dreaming of a fresh start with his mistress-turned-fiancé. If only he knew that our once loving relationship was about to mutate into a blood-soaked legal war that would leave him destitute and disgraced. At last, the storm broke when Diane hand-delivered a blitzkrieg of paperwork to Rowan's rented apartment, a motion to freeze all of his assets based on evidence that he had grossly misused marital funds to carry out his affairs. He would have no choice but to limp into court and confront the devastation he'd wrought. The look of abject horror on his face when we met for the first hearing was almost worth enduring his sadistic betrayal. His arrogant mistress was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps she'd finally wised up and cut her losses before I dismantled her meal ticket. Rowan's disgraced expression turned to outrage as Diane mercilessly outlined the exhaustive evidence detailing his sordid double life, from bank statements to hotel receipts bearing the names of his mistresses. His lawyer could only sputter impotently, overwhelmed by the scorched earth case we had prepared. "You're making a big mistake," Rowan snarled after the humiliating proceedings, flagging me down in the courthouse lobby. For a fleeting moment, the man I had once loved flickered in his eyes. "Alara, we can stop this. We can work things out, start over." I regarded him with icy disdain as Diane looked on, ready to pounce if he dared to push further. "Did you honestly think I would just slink away and let you ride off into your pathetic second life?" I asked, reveling in the sting of my words. His face hardened, his features twisting into an unrecognizable sneer. "You're going to pay for this, you vindictive bitch." Diane immediately stepped between us, her hand raised in warning. I flashed her a reassuring glance. After everything he'd put me through, his impotent threats bounced off my newfound armor of indifference. "Believe what you want," I said, turning to walk away. "I want you to remember one thing as we proceed forward. You brought this upon yourself, Rowan, and I'm just getting started." In the aftermath of that explosive first hearing, the legal battlefield between Rowan and I devolved into a morass of vicious mudslinging. His lawyers accused me of fabricating evidence, of secretly meeting with other men to manufacture his indiscretions, a rich claim coming from a man who had been paying for not one, but multiple mistresses over the course of our marriage. I simply steeled myself against the slander, focusing on the righteous fury burning within me every time I thought of his betrayal. Diane assured me these were merely desperate gambits to create smokescreens. "The evidence trail doesn't lie," she stated with sterile confidence. "All we need is for one crack to appear in his sordid facade, then his entire life crumbles." Fate seemed determined to provide me that crack in the most unlikely of ways. While updating the private investigator on the latest legal wrangling, he made an offhand comment that stopped me cold. "That Marcella woman certainly gets around, doesn't she?" I froze, my hand clenching around the phone. "What do you mean by that?" "I've been doing some digging on Miss Perfect," he explained. "Turns out she's not just shacking up with your soon-to-be ex. I have proof she's also entertaining an older, wealthier businessman on the side." White-hot indignation blazed through me at the thought of that smug, silicone-saturated snake pulling the same duplicitous act on multiple men. So much for her claims of being some love-struck victim of circumstance. In that moment, a deliciously devious plan began taking shape in my mind. "Keep looking into this other man," I instructed the investigator. "I need to know everything. Who he is, where they meet, all of it." A devilish grin spread across his weathered features. "You've got a juicy one in mind, don't you, Mrs. Davies?" I matched his expression with one of cold, purposeful resolve. "Marcella thinks she can sink her claws into married men without consequence. It's time she learned how it feels to get a taste of her own medicine." Over the next few weeks, Diane and I worked closely with the investigator to quietly assemble an airtight case confirming Marcella's extracurricular dalliances. We obtained photos of her entering a high-rise luxury condo belonging to business mogul Christopher Woodrow, a 60-something tycoon with a vast empire under his control, and more importantly, an extremely image-conscious wife sitting atop that empire. You know what they say. Diane mused, as we pored over the surveillance stills of Marcella and Mr. Woodrow in decidedly compromising situations. Mistresses always tell their married lovers that they'd never actually leave their spouse. For a woman like Mrs. Woodrow, learning her husband's side piece has been playing the same brazen game with other wealthy marks. Well, that might just push her over the edge. My eyes gleamed with vengeful anticipation. Marcella would get her sanctimonious, holier-than-thou attitude forcibly readjusted once we went public with her rampant infidelities. If she thought she could shatter the sanctity of marriage for her own devious ends, it was time her world came crashing down around her too. And Rowan? Well, when footage emerged of his beloved fiancée consorting with other wealthy paramours behind his back, any glimmer of sympathy would shrivel within him. The ultimate insult for a man who had risked everything to leave his family behind for her hollow promises of love. They were the perfect marks, both of them consumed with avarice, arrogance, and lust, now mere lambs awaiting the slaughter I was meticulously preparing. By the time I was done, not even the ashes of their bloated egos would remain. After weeks of quietly compiling the damning receipts, photos, and call records, everything was finally in place for my grand counter-strike. I could scarcely contain my eagerness as I dialed the number for Diane's direct line. "It's time," I said, my voice dripping with finality. "Let's burn this whole sordid facade to the ground." The annual Westbridge Charity Gala was the perfect stage for my grand vengeance, a swanky, high-profile event frequented by the city's elite upper crust, including Rowan and his precious Marcella, who would no doubt be reveling in their freshly minted reputations as a glamorous power couple rising from the ashes of my failed marriage. Little did those two arrogant fools suspect that their entire sham of a relationship was about to detonate in front of all their well-heeled peers. No amount of public niceties or honeyed lies would insulate them from the reckoning I had meticulously orchestrated. When Diane and I arrived at the lavish Westbridge Hotel ballroom, our eyes scanned the glittering crowd for our intended targets. Sure enough, there was Marcella, draped over Rowan like a sleek, overpriced trophy, her skin-tight scarlet dress leaving almost nothing to the imagination. "Eyes on the prize," Diane muttered in my ear as I felt a pang of disgust and pity for the man I once loved. It's showtime. Our preparation had been perfect. While mingling among the city's elite under the guise of donor solicitations, I slipped Diane's assistant the incendiary photos and videos we had compiled of Marcella's rampant infidelities. Our evidence bombshell was ready to detonate. Within minutes, the first whispers began rippling through the crowd like wildfire. All around us, guests gasped and pointed iPhones as the uncovered salacious shots of Marcella cavorting with her elderly tycoon lover went viral. Someone must have recognized the infamous Christopher Woodrow. The cheating scandal quickly took on a life of its own, spreading like a plume of radioactive gossip. Diane and I feigned innocence as partygoers gaped in scandalized rapture, but from the corner of my eye, I glimpsed Marcella's face draining of color before her gaze met mine across the ballroom. Her painted lips contorted in rage, finally connecting the dots of who was responsible for her spectacular public unraveling. Bingo. Just then, a sleek ivory shoe appeared at the edge of my vision. I followed the impossibly toned leg attached to it all the way up to the stunningly furious face of Miranda Woodrow, Christopher's scorned, ultra-affluent wife. "You sordid little bitch," she snarled, spit flying as she seized Marcella by her expensively coiffed hair. "Did you really think you could keep making a fool of me behind my back?" With that, Miranda violently wrenched Marcella around to face the crowd, ripping the front of her dress open in a shower of sequins and exposing her artificially enhanced assets to the entire gala audience. Marcella shrieked as camera flashes erupted like strobe lights, her arms frantically crossing to cover herself. My eyes darted across the room to find Rowan staring slack-jawed at his disgraced fiancée. A nauseating mixture of shock and self-pity etched across his features. I watched with perverse satisfaction as comprehension dawned on his malleable face. Marcella had merely been using him as another wealthy plaything to bankroll her lavish needs. What a perfect poetic justice! That the two people most responsible for nuking my life from orbit were now facing the same brutal humiliation on the grandest stage imaginable. As Marcella finally broke free from Miranda's clutches and fled the ballroom in hysterics, Rowan turned toward me with a haunted, soulless stare. Our eyes met across the crowd of aghast guests, and in that moment, I allowed the full force of my vindication to blaze across my expression. "You did this to yourself." I mouthed the words for his benefit, letting their implication linger like the pungent aroma of schadenfreude wafting through the air. His jaw clenched as he gave the briefest of nods, a reluctant admission that I had indeed exacted the ultimate retribution from my former life. With that, he turned and stalked away from the gala through a quickly forming void in the crowd, leaving utter debasement and ruin in his wake. I sipped my champagne, allowing the delicious moment to linger on my tongue as Diane materialized at my side. "Well, Mrs. Davies," she murmured with a proud smile, "I do believe this evening has been a full and resounding success, don't you?" A savage grin stretched across my face as I surveyed the catastrophic scene my vengeance had wrought. "You don't know the half of it," I replied, "but I have a feeling this is just the beginning of something beautiful." In the aftermath of the Westbridge Gala calamity, Rowan did what any disgraced, recently humbled man would do. He came slinking back with his tail between his legs, begging for mercy. I'll admit, seeing him reduced to a shell of his formerly arrogant self provided a wicked sort of satisfaction. Gone was the cocksure bravado, the unearned superiority, and callous indifference to my pain. Now sitting across the table from me in Diane's office, he looked more like a kicked stray than my husband of 6 years. "Alara," he choked, as I eyed him with unconcealed disdain. I don't know what to say. What happened with Marcella? God, I was such a fool. I said nothing, letting the silence fester until he visibly squirmed under my pitiless glare. "I know I can never take back all the hurt I caused you," he continued, shamefaced. "But I'm begging you from the bottom of my heart, please give me one more chance. Let me make things right between us." A harsh bark of laughter escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Make things right?" I echoed incredulously. "Rowan, you cheated on me repeatedly with multiple women over the course of our marriage. You funneled money, you lied, you manipulated me at every turn. What on earth makes you think you deserve a second chance at anything from me?" His eyes went wide, realizing the magnitude of his transgressions for perhaps the first time. I was destroyed when I saw you with Marcel," he stammered. "She was just using me like some pathetic meal ticket to bankroll her lifestyle. When that footage got out, I realized how blind I'd been, how terribly I failed you as a husband by letting my lusts spiral so completely out of control." I regarded him stonily, refusing to let his carefully rehearsed pangs of remorse disarm me, not after watching him callously tear my life asunder in pursuit of temporary pleasures. "Do you have any idea how it felt?" I asked, my voice low and menacing. "To have the man I loved, the man I built a life and future with, not only betray me, but humiliate me in the worst way possible, over and over again. To learn that you had cast me aside like some meaningless burden in favor of chasing disgusting trysts with interchangeable floozies." Rowan visibly wilted as the weight of his sins settled over him in palpable waves. I could see the self-loathing and regret contorting his features into a pathetic mask of shame. Good. He was finally getting a taste of the anguish he had so blithely inflicted upon me. "I was a monster," he said heavily. "A selfish, vile monster who didn't deserve an ounce of your unconditional love. I don't expect your forgiveness, Alara. I just hope I can make amends somehow, even if it takes giving you every last penny I have. Anything to stop being this despicable person I became." Revulsion churned in my gut as his sniveling pleas washed over me. As much as I longed to revel in his suffering, the thought of indulging his desire for penance turned my stomach. I was no longer the malleable, naive woman he married. I would never allow him to manipulate me through feigned contrition ever again. Rising to my feet, I looked him dead in the eye and saw the faint glimmer of hope that I might offer him the absolution he suddenly craved. That glimmer was immediately extinguished by my next words. "I don't want your money, Rowan. I want your absence from my life." He flinched as if struck, his hangdog expression melting into one of naked shock. You mean—" "Don't play dumb," I snapped, resisting the urge to slap that look off his traitorous face. "After everything you've done, every line you boldly crossed with your tawdry indiscretions, do you really think I would be naive enough to let you wriggle back into my life?" "But Alara, But nothing," I seethed, leaning across the table until I was mere inches from his pathetic countenance. "If you agree to these terms right here, right now, I'll ensure this divorce is over swiftly, and you can slink off into whatever debauched second act you have planned. But you will never, and I mean never, ask for my forgiveness or understanding. Do you hear me? You lost that right the second you started using our marriage vows as toilet paper." Rowan could only gape soundlessly, seemingly grasping for words that wouldn't come. Diane placed the paperwork on the table between us, offering a phantom of a nod. "Your choice, Mr. Davies," she intoned, the rows of tiny font suddenly looming larger than life. "You can either dig your heels in further or accept these very generous terms and grant Mrs. Davies the peace of mind she deserves to move on once and for all." The silence stretched out like an eternity as I watched the kaleidoscope of emotion flicker across his face. Indignation, shame, bitter acceptance. Finally, with a grunt of resignation, he snatched up the pen and scrawled his name across the dotted line, cementing our divorce into inevitability. Our eyes met one final time, and I allowed the ghost of a triumphant smile to crease my lips at his chastened expression. "You'll never hear from me again after this," he said through gritted teeth. "But I hope you find the peace you're looking for, Alara. You deserve far better than the depraved bastard I became." With that parting remark, he turned and strode out of the office, the leaden weight of his failure dogging each dejected step. I watched until his retreating back disappeared down the hallway, releasing a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It was finally over. The man who once meant everything to me was now expunged from my life like a cancer. I could at long last close that sordid book and prepare to move forward into my new reality, one of my own creation, shaped by the venom of his actions. Diane placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, her customary shark-like grin softening at the edges. "You did it," she murmured. "You reclaimed your power and dignity. I've never seen a woman rise from the ashes like you have." I returned her smile, the promise of untold possibilities glimmering on the horizon. "This was only the beginning," I said resolutely. "My rebirth starts now." 6 months after Rowan's bitter departure from my life, the ink was finally dry on our divorce settlement. Thanks to Diane's tenacious legal wrangling, I emerged from the ashes of my shattered marriage with the lion's share of our formerly shared assets, including the deed to our family home where I could begin anew. As part of the agreement, Rowan was legally prohibited from attempting to contact me, not that he would have anyway. The last I'd heard through the grapevine, he had slunk off to lick his wounds from the scandal, living in quiet shame after our explosive downfall shredded his reputation. I couldn't say I derived any joy from seeing him laid so low. My focus was solely on myself now, on embracing the new chapter stretching out before me. Still, there was a certain cathartic release in knowing the man who tried to destroy me had been rendered just as devastated. The papers had certainly enjoyed dissecting every lurid angle of our divorce saga. The headlines blared about the scorned wife who outlasted her cheating husband and the rise of a new divorce warrior queen. While slightly crass, I couldn't deny the grim amusement I felt at being rebranded a folk hero by divorcees vicariously living through my vengeance. It was a strange feeling, but not entirely unwelcome. After the trauma Rowan had inflicted, I refused to wallow in victimhood. My new life would be one of strength, resilience, and creating something positive from the ashes he left in his wake. Which was why, nearly 3 months after the official divorce was finalized, I hosted an intimate gala of my own in the ballroom of Westbridge Hotel, the site of Marcella's ultimate downfall all those months ago. Around me, the city's elite and affluent mingled amidst towering centerpieces of fresh roses, while a string quartet provided refined ambiance. Only this time, there would be no sordid scandals or uncovered affairs to upstage my event. No, this gathering was the inaugural fundraiser for my namesake foundation, Alara's Light, devoted to supporting women who had survived the betrayal of infidelity and emerged stronger for their resilience. My speech that night drew thunderous applause from the well-heeled crowd as I outlined the organization's mission to provide counseling, legal aid, and financial assistance to struggling divorcees in need. A portion of the millions I had secured from Rowan would seed my foundation's crucial early days. No woman should ever feel helpless in the wake of a spouse's betrayal, I proclaimed from the podium, scanning the rapt audience with rejuvenated poise. With compassion and community, we can help uplift lives from the devastation and allow them to flourish anew, just as I was empowered to do in my own journey. After the remarks concluded, a line quickly formed of well-wishers and prospective donors eager to pledge support to my cause. I greeted each one with a warm smile, my heart swelling with pride and purpose. Who could have fathomed that this dignified, self-assured woman holding court over a throng of admirers was the same broken soul lying shattered on her kitchen floor only a year ago? The transformation was nothing short of a miracle, a raw testament to the power of cunning, resolve, and the merciless pursuit of justice. I was so invigorated by the night's success that I barely registered the presence of a newcomer waiting patiently at the back of the well-wisher line. He was a trim, handsome man in his early 40s with striking hazel eyes that gleamed with an unmistakable hint of admiration. "Mrs. Davies," he said warmly as his turn arrived, his voice carrying the faintest lilt of a British accent. "I must commend you on such a worthy and impactful mission. Your story of overcoming such unthinkable heartbreak is nothing short of inspiring." I arched an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself by his effusive praise and polished demeanor. Up close, I could make out the slim-fitted tuxedo and coiffed sandy hair that definitely belonged to a man of considerable means. "You're too kind, Mr. Douglas," he supplied with a roguish smile. "Nigel Douglas, a good friend of Christopher Woodrow's actually, though I suspect we travel in rather different circles these days after his personal unpleasantness." My lips twitched in amusement at his deft understatement. Of course, the humiliating affair between Marcel and Christopher Woodrow had irreparably nuked the tycoon's marriage and reputation. Nigel was no doubt alluding to having cut ties with the disgraced mogul in the aftermath. "I'm a journalist by trade," he went on, seemingly emboldened by my bemused expression. "Though my true passion has always been amplifying stories just like yours, of courage, perseverance, and the remarkable resilience of the indomitable human spirit." My heart fluttered as our gazes remained locked, a tantalizing electric charge seeming to crackle between us. This Nigel Douglas was certainly full of dashing charm, not to mention being rather easier on the eyes than I'd grown accustomed to in recent years. "Well, Mr. Douglas," I said, extending my hand as a coy smile played across my lips, "if the spirit truly does move you, perhaps you'd allow me to give you a more intimate account of my trials over a drink sometime soon." His grip was warm and confident as he accepted the proffered handshake, holding it perhaps a touch longer than necessary. "I would be utterly delighted, Mrs. Davies, more than you could possibly know." As I watched him depart through the twinkling crowd of socialites, I felt a giddy spark of excitement that had long eluded me, the thrill of new possibilities, and a future unshackled from the trauma of the past. The crushing weight of Rowan's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but by the alchemy of my own iron resolve, I had spun that devastation into abject triumph. The future was finally mine, to craft anew on my own terms, And this radiant night under Westbridge's glittering chandeliers was merely the first mingling rays of the new dawn I had clawed back into existence, no longer a victim, but a victor reborn from the ashes of my former life.